My name is William Sutton, and I'm going to be showing you how to set up UV maps and decals for a complex model. Right now, this is the design for the Hippo Giraffe for the Tin Woodsman of Oz movie, and this is the original design. You see we're going to end up with bump maps, color map for the spots, and even a hair map to control where the hair grows out of that. The model was modeled by Ken Heslop and did a great job making a 3D model in Animation Master. And I'm going to show you how to set up some groups and prepare this model for painting. The first thing I want to do is assign groups for different areas where I can easily select them when I'm stamping my decal. There's already a group here for these toenails. If you look in the project workspace under groups, you see I have a group here for the skin. I'm going to hide everything else. So now we're only going to be picking patches that are on the skin, and I'm going to give them a color so that I can easily pick them. So if I'm going to do this left side of the model, we'll just name this left side. And I'm going to give it a surface color to make it easier to pick what I'm doing. Just pick random here. So now you can see, I can easily see what patches I've got. I'm using this patch select tool. I'll hold down shift and just start adding the patches that I want to be on this side. This can seem like a tedious step, but when you get into making your decals, this is going to make it really quick. Probably going to have a big decal for each side of the model, and then I'm going to go underneath and make a group for the bottom where it all joins together. I could just lasso a bunch of this stuff, but I kind of get into just going along here and doing it this way. I just hold down the shift key. You need groups like this where you see I hold these control points along this center line on this left side. When I make another group, it'll also pick up these points from the other side. So when I hide them, I want to be able to make sure I get everything that I want to decal with that group. I'm not quite sure exactly where I'm going to split the line. That's why I'm going in the side view. So it may be that I don't want all of this. I might want to come from the bottom to get all of this here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. See, I don't want these, so I'll hold down Alt, remove those from the group, go back to Shift, and just skip that. And I'll get this when I get the bottom side. tops of the feet in a different stamp. See that Ken already has a group for that tip of that tail. I'm not sure right now how I want to do the top of the head. I may need to get it in a separate stamp. So I may just go here. Sometimes I have a plan as I go along, and I'll look at the model beforehand and kind of decide what's going to be the best way to split it up. And a lot of times I'll kind of make up my mind as I'm going and maybe change it along the way. But I make all those decisions at this point rather than after I start stamping decals. I'm going to unwrap this face from the side, and right now the only part I'm not sure how I'm going to do is the very top of the head, whether I do it by spreading out the top in an action and so I can get the back side of the ears in that same stamp, or if I'm going to have an extra stamp for the top of the head. What I'll do, I am going to just go, I'm going to split the body down the middle. I'll figure out how to get that ear spread out when I do my action to flatten it all out. So that is going to be my left side of the body. And then I'll do the same process here on the right. Patch select tool. Once I have my decals applied, I'm going to delete these groups. I won't need them except for selecting my patches for my stamps when I get to this next step. So you just hold down Shift to add a patch. You can hold down Alt to take the patch away. See here, I've accidentally added some green patches over on the other side. You can easily go here, select like my left side. Hold down the Alt key. Take those suckers out. Accidentally clicked through. I was working in this side view. That's one reason I like to color each group as I'm going along, just to make it easy for me to see what patches are part of that group. So I might not notice just a little flashing control point somewhere on the wrong side, and that might cause me trouble a little later. See here, I didn't get one on the lip on the left side. If I were to miss that, go ahead and decal the model and get everything done and think I was finished, and I might find this little white patch that didn't have any decal on it at all, and it'll create a little bit of extra work for me to go in and make sure that I got it stamped again. And I'd have a separate stamp just for these little missed patches, so I don't want to miss any. I'm thinking that one I'm going to get from this bottom decal when I get the back side of the leg. So that's why I left that out on both sides here, this patch. The grain, I've missed this. That's my left side. Now my next patch, or my next decal, or stamp, I'm going to get the bottom side of the belly and the back side of the legs. I'll spread them out. Then I'll have a stamp that's going to get the bottom of the feet and the top, and another for the tops of the feet. So that's my next group. So let's go ahead and start that one. Underside. its own color. What color doesn't matter. Like I said, these are going to be just temporary groups. I'll get rid of them later so the riggers and animators aren't totally confused by what they are. So I won't need them again. I think I'm going to go back and add that next row of patches to the green. See how it's going to unfold. I'm going to take that one out. Now while I'm thinking about it. Looks like I had already done that on the orange side. Think this is a lot of work, but you'll see in a minute. When I get to my next step is going to be a decaling action where I hide and unhide these groups and stamp one decal to create a template that is going to allow me to paint my textures on one map that joins up all of these different areas. So what I'm doing is essentially planning my canvas when I paint my decals. That's the way I think about it. I think about my models, in this case Ken Heslop's model, as a 3D canvas, and all I'm doing is thinking how am I going to spread it out so that I can flatten it. I didn't want to get those toes. One more stamp for the bottoms of the feet and one stamp for the tops of the feet. Say what I'm doing so far in case I have to get interrupted. these feet. Tops of the feet, they're going to all be one direction when I stamp. So I don't have to, even though they're separated, I don't need to do them separately. It's different stamps. I'll spread them out on the UV editor, make a nice tidy little canvas for myself, and then the next part I'm going to show you how to paint the decals in Photoshop, or even in the new 3D painter by Philippe Louet, which is awesome. Okay, there's my feet tops in the back. Same thing in the front. Probably helps just have a lazy Saturday afternoon and a cup of coffee to do this, because like I said, this part's the most tedious, but I think it's the most important part. I don't know, maybe it isn't the most tedious. All this artwork is just one of those things where you have to kind of sit down and get into the zone and then just go to work at it. Alright. I think I have the tops of my feet all grouped. So that just leaves these here bare patches. That's going to be the bottom of my feet. Give them a color. And let's go with red. As you notice, I just toggle what view I am using keyboard shortcuts on the number pad, or just rotating as I see fit to get at all these things. see every patch. Oh, look, not every patch. That's why it's in color. So, look here, I've left out some. On my underside decal, or my underside stamp. So let's get those guys. Let's do another run through here and make sure everything on the surface of the skin is in color. These you see through the eyes, that's the inside of the mouth. We're not going to worry about that. It's connected, but if I do a decal for that, I'm going to do that as a completely separate decal. It's kind of like the eyes and things are already done, so we won't be redoing those. Okay, so based on the colors, you can see how my plan is to split up the groups and split up the patches and stamp my decal. Okay, we've made our groups, and I'm actually showing this part for the third time because I kept having problems with the screen capture software. But now we're going to take these groups and decal all of them onto one decal using multiple stamps. I've created an image that's blank. It's 1024 by 1024, and I've imported that already, and I'm going to go into my action. And actually, I'm going to clear this action because I've already shown it. First thing I'm going to do is hide everything but the groups I want to work with. I'm going to start with the left side, hide everything else. I'm going to work essentially in the side view. What I've got to do is pull the patches that are on the seam out, and I'm basically going to manually flatten this. I could grab each of these points one by one and move them out. Right now I'm going to just select the entire thing, and I'm going to use a plug-in by Marcel Brickman that is called Push. It is set to key at frame 10 centimeters, and it is going to push those points 10 centimeters away from along their surface normal. So you see I've kind of stretched them out. It's not enough for all that's up here, and it's a little too much around the lips, but it'll work just fine around the tail. And I'm going to do the rest manually again. Alright. I'm going to need to stretch and create more canvas around here so that we can decal the whole ear at one time. So that's, I'm going to just take and move these points here. I need a little bit more room for the eye also. Okay. These are the spline rings at the base of the ear. You can see I'm still in 3D, but I'm going to scale this all flat before I stamp it. And these rings will be see, move this little part of the ear small. This part close. should be enough canvas for the ear. We'll get some stretching because there's no easy way to completely flatten out the ear and it not stretch the texture a little bit in some parts of it, but I'm going to try to keep that as unnoticeable as I can. There's a flatten command in Animation Master, but for something like this, it's going to be hard to make that work for you. We only have to do it with one side, and we'll take care of the rest when we use paste mirrored to transfer the motion that we're putting here onto the right side. See, that's a lot of detail going up inside the nose, so I'm going to have to kind of eyeball that, get it into place. I can see my spline rings for the nose. Hard to pick it out. These areas that are up inside the nostril, it's not going to matter that they stretch, so I'm just going to get all of those points out here in the open where I can pick them up with the decal. This is an opening, so I don't need to leave any room there. Ideally, you want to leave even spaced patches similar to the way it's evenly spaced on the model. So you want to try to minimize how distorted you are when you're flattening things out. You don't want to go overboard and you create stretch marks when right now you're essentially trying to undo what would get stretches if you just stamp this decal from the side without doing anything. With the projection paint in 3D Painter, you could minimize that distortion, but I'm going to not assume that you have that, so I'm going to do all of this manually. And since I don't need any of this space here because it's the interior of the eye, I'm going to move in these points that are the inner part of the eyelid into this direction. That way I can move these other points that are kind of jumbled up in here down. That leaves me a little room now to move the inner parts of the eyelid down where I can pick up the texture when I stamp it. said before that grouping all of the stuff, getting ready for this step was probably the most tedious, but as you can see, it probably isn't the most tedious, because you've essentially got to model or remodel your model, or in this case Ken's model, into a flat canvas, because you're essentially creating what you're going to use when you get ready to, or when you decal. And you see where I used that push, I have pushed the lips into each other, and so I'm going to fix that up. Hopefully this time I won't have any more problems with the Camtasia software, except I heard a lightning storm just start up outside, so if my power goes out, I'll be doing all of this yet one more time. But so I've already had this guy decaled 2 times already today, so due to some technical difficulties, not with Animation Master, but with my computer, I'm doing this one more time. Alright. That's the lips, the nostrils, the eye, ear, all going to be able to pick up the decal. This is the front part of the chest, and we need to move it out about right there, where it would be if it were unfolded. You can see by the spacing of the rest of the patches the amount of space that ought to be for that. Ken did a real good job modeling this to keep the patches kind of even, and that kind of helps me in determining where I need to create this extra canvas. Here where I've got this spacing here going around the leg, but when it gets to that front edge, you see it looks like it's really close together, and it really isn't. It's just that we're looking at it from the side. So I'm going to select that. Move it out here. And create what ought to be the canvas for when I paint the texture for that leg. And I have to move that belly. That will stretch a little bit because the way, how far I had to move it, but I don't think it will be too noticeable. Trouble with my mouse here. That leg, part of the belly here. Same issue. This is the buttocks. Pull that around so it's going to pick up the texture when we stamp it from this side. I think our tail's good. Those are our legs. None of our patches are overlapping. Now it's time to apply the decal to this side. To make the decal, I'm going to save where I'm at. I'm going to go to decal folder. You notice there's already decals on this model for the eyeballs. Right click, new decal, and I'm going to choose the blank image. Just for this first time, I'm going to scale this size of this down. After this application, I'm not going to rescale the thing. I will just stamp it again in different places, and my resolution, my size of my patches is going to be consistent for everything. So I'm going to stamp the left side here, the right side here, the underside, and then the tops and bottoms of the feet. So I'll apply that. Now, when you're this far away, when you apply, because of the screen resolution of those pixels, some little patches may not pick up the decal. If you look here on the face, these didn't pick up the decal. So what I need to do is right here on decals, right click, group undecaled control points, and then I'm going to hide everything else. Go back to my action, go back to the decal, and I'm going to zoom in on those patches that didn't pick up the decal. Make sure they're on screen and apply it again. Now you see they have picked it up. Not sure why this 5-point patch is drawing strange right here. However, I do know that it does have the decal on it. So I'm not going to worry about that. Alright. Now I don't want to have to do all of that work again. So if I go back to my action, you see I've got my model unhidden again. Let's hide everything but this. Go to this action. Oh, I know what happened. What happens, I told you before I was going to scale it all, and I've got in a hurry and didn't do it all. So let me get this decal. I'm going to delete the stamp. I'm going to delete this stamp. What I wanted to do before I stamped it is select everything, set the pivot to 0 on the x-axis, and transform, scale everything to 0 in the x-axis. That makes everything nice and flat, so that it's going to pick up the decal and not have any weird anomalies. So I forgot to do that, so that's what happened there. So that's no problem. I'm just going to restamp that. Actually, apply. If I look at the Siggraph, you see the 5-point patch didn't act all weird. I still missed the few little patches. I got the others. I'm going to still group the undecaled control points, hide everything else, go back to the action, and zoom in here again. You see I got a little corner in the mouth, and I got a little bit of the nostril. Now that these patches show on the screen better, it's going to catch the decal when I apply it. There you go. So I don't lose track of all these things. I'm going to name that left side 1. to. Again, I'm going to hide everything but the left side. I'm going back to my action. I'm going to select all of these control points. I'm going to copy them. Remember, I'm working in an action. Then I'm going to go unhide everything. And I'm going to hide everything but the right side. Then I'm going to go in my action. I'm going to select everything, go to Edit, Paste Mirrored. Now if I look at it from this side, you see all of the tweaks I just did to flatten everything out manually are there. So now I take and load my decal again. I'm going to move the decal down here near the bottom. And apply. If I look on the Hippogiraffe model from this other side, you see I've covered up all the orange except probably, yeah, some of the little bitty patches didn't catch it. That's something I didn't know for a long time, that it kind of depends how big things are on the screen when you're stamping the decal, whether it's going to pick up. So a patch that's too small to even see on the screen is not going to catch the decal when you apply it. So that's something to check before you get on into painting your decals and then come back and find that you've missed some patches. Alright, same drill. Group undecaled control points. Hide them, go back to my action, double click my decal again, and I'm going to zoom in here and make sure this time they get seen. Now we're good. Left side and right side are both stamped. I'm going to name that stamp right side 1. Right side 2. Okay, the next group I want to stamp is going to be the bottom side. And select it, hide inverse, my action here, I want to clear that, and look at it from the bottom view. You see I can't see my legs, so what I'd need to do is rotate them out the other direction. I'll just have to rotate the one side. Well, I don't want to stretch that too far. I think I've got too much of the leg. Let's just get this much. That's better. Then we can manually straighten this out. We need to move the chest forward. need to do that side too, but I'm going to do it in a second step. So I'm going to copy all of this motion and paste it to the other side. Now if I'm not as even on this side, it really doesn't matter as much because it's underneath the model. No one's going to see it as much. It will here on the edge where that's the seam. So I'll try to make sure that looks good. So there is that front leg. Let's do the same on this back leg. You can see that there's a little weird group that's part of the toe on the foot that's attached, that's part of that group, and wasn't meant to be. It's not a problem. It doesn't have a patch there. It's just part of the spline. I'm going to ignore that. It's that weird 5-point patch that was in the crook of the leg. So those legs are straight. I'm going to select all of this, copy that, go here, edit, paste mirrored. Okay, so that is our belly. You'll notice that's that stray toe spline that doesn't have a patch on it, but move it out here out of the way. It's accidentally a part of that group. I'm not going to go back and redo all of that. Now, see, this thing is still kind of really weird. Let's select it all. Set its pivot to 0 on the X, and it already is. And then I want to make the Y scale 0. Bring in the decal. And we'll just put it over here to this side. I'll move it in the right place later. And apply. If we look on the Giraffe model, we didn't miss any patches. There's that straight toe spline. And I'm going to save this and I'm going to save this capture and come back in just a second. Okay, we've got the left side and we've got the right side and we've got the underside all decaled. Now we need the tops of the feet, the bottoms of the feet, and I think I'll put the toenails, the inside of the mouth, which I didn't do before, the tongue and stuff like that, all on the same decal so that we can paint it all later, paint it all at one time. So I'm going to look here. I've got a top of my feet. I'm going to hide everything else. Go back to my action. Go top view here. And like before, I can do one side, spread them out, and then paste mirror to do the other side. One reason you might want to have all of your textures on one decal like this is that if you're exporting your model later to a game engine, and I know there's a Tin Woodman of Oz game in progress, most game engines won't allow you to have multiple texture maps for the model the way Animation Master will. So I may go ahead and even put the eye model in this same texture sheet, even though it already has a decal right now, just so that it's easier for the guys who end up making a game model from this same model. Appreciate that, being able to use the Siggraph model without having to go in and do some extra work. So I'm going to copy those changes. And paste mirrored to get them on the other side. I'll bring in my decal again. And I think I'll just for now put them right over here. We'll be moving them around to a wait. Let's go ahead and flatten those guys. stretching again. Got everything okay. Now the only part we don't have is the bottom of the feet. Select them, hide everything else, go back to my action, and they should be ready to stamp. They're not quite flat, but well, I've got to spread out my toes a little bit here, so I'll go ahead and do some little tweaks before I stamp the decal. Copy that, paste mirrored, and then scale that. To 0 on the line. Bring in the decal one more time. So now the skin of the hippogyraph is all in place. I don't have any decal on my toes, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on this decal sheet also. And we'll just find those. Here's the nails, and we'll hide everything else. And I'm not sure what is going to be the best direction to stamp these, and so I think probably from the front. However, I'm going to have to do some changes here to spread them all out. I'll move these nails up. And let's go I'm going to do what I'm modeling right now. I'm just working on the left side's toes, and I'm spreading the canvas out to give myself enough texture, or enough room for my textures. And then I'm going to copy and paste that on the right side toes. Then I'll flatten it, or I'll scale it to 0. In the Z-axis this time, and stamp it from the front view, and I should have plenty of canvas for my toes. Alright, I'll even just move these down a little. So these are all laid out. It looks like the toes are modeled a little different on each one, aren't they? I'll select this, copy it, select this, paste mirrored. Then I'm going to select everything. Pivot is at 0 in the X. The transform is going to be 0 in the Z axis. Now we see our toes are all spread out nice and flat. Let's bring in the decal. And we'll stick them. Let's see, I think there's some room up here. Have to get the position exactly right now. You can see I didn't miss anything now. All of my exterior on this Siggraph is decaled. Let's name those toes. That was my feet top. That was the feet bottom. This is the toes. So you see, you really should rename those. While you're doing it. Otherwise, it'll be hard to select them later. You'll quickly lose track where you're at. Siggraph has an inside of its mouth, gums, teeth, and tongue. Let me go ahead and add them to this decal, if I can find them. There we go. Bottom gums, top gums. Looks like some of my teeth are also part of the gum group. That must have been an accident somewhere. I'm going to select these gums and select everything that's connected and hide the rest. The teeth are connected. Well, I guess somebody's going to use a material for these gums, because I'm not going to go in there and deal with all of that right now. That's too much work. Right now we're just going to show UVing and decaling, and how you set up groups, which I covered already on the body, is important later for selecting them easily to be able to decal them. So if we do a decal for the gums and the tongue and the teeth, we'll do that on a separate decal. Alright, I'm going to save this. And the next thing we're going to do is to look at the UV editor. And if you look on the blank decal and click edit, it's going to open a window that shows you all of those stamps. You see, some of them are in the same place, so we've got to move them, and so that they're not hitting something else. Alright. Instead of opening the whole decal, we can double click these stamps, and you'll see that we can look at the feet top. Those feet top coordinates now are dark. Drag a window around them, and I can move them so they're not hitting the others. And I need to do the same thing with the feet bottom. You can just double click the stamp. Actually, I think they'd be better off way over here. That'll leave me some more room. Put them right there. The other decal that's in the way is this one. That's going to be a little bit tricky. I don't really have a good space for that. I don't want to have to rotate it 90 degrees, but I might not have much choice. My other option would be to scale it, but then it's going to be at a different resolution than the other stamps and might make it a little trickier to paint. Let's see what we can do. See, it makes it a little wonky, and that doesn't help me. What I may need to do is scale this side stamps smaller, and then rearrange things. And what I'm going to do instead of doing anything right here is I'm going to go to the whole decal. Oops. Didn't mean to double click, I meant to right click it. I'm going to select everything all at once. And scale them smaller. And that'll give me a little bit more room for arranging things on the sheet. Now I can move the underside out of the way. And get, I need a lasso tool, don't I? Move it up here for a second. Notice it's off the sheet entirely. I want to be able to lasso all of this. accidentally got those points. Move them back up. You see, you can actually spread out your decal and stuff in this editor, not in the action. But it's kind of tricky. There's not a lot of different tools to use, so generally try not to do that, not to have to do that. Side. See, I know I've got right side and right side too. I don't want to have to get them all at once. Ideally, I'd want to be able to use up all this empty space and pack everything as tight as I can. On the sheet, for now, that may have to be enough. Let's save that. This is called the Decal View. It can also be called the UV Editor. And this is what I'm going to use as a template in Photoshop for painting. Now if I put the eyes on here, or the mouth and teeth, there's plenty of room to get other areas of the model that aren't decaled, that I could use this same decal for those things. And that's the idea here. I guess that I could have been more, selective with how I did this. That way I would get the best amount of room, but it's going to work, and I think it shows the basic ideas. Well, so we'll have a little bit of extra wasted image space, but I'm not really worried about it. What I like to do is, since I'm going to be going to Photoshop next, and start Photoshop, I need a screen capture of that decal view. And this is going to serve as the template for painting textures in Photoshop and having them line up with the coordinates on the decal. Alright, it's open. I'm going to hide the in version 11 you could maximize the view and everything would fit on here, but this is best as I can do. Alright, so my whole decal is showing. Remember, this is supposed to be 1024 by 1024. It's clearly not, because I'm working in I'm not seeing the full view of that decal. So these lines are not going to be nearly as sharp as that when they become pixels in Photoshop. Okay, alright, what you want to do is hit print screen. That copies this entire image to the clipboard. I'm going to close the decal view. I don't need to be looking at it. And I'm going to look at Photoshop. And go File, New. And you'll you'll see by default you get whatever's on the clipboard in dimensions. Okay, so I've got an 800 by 600. I'll edit and I will paste, and that's my screen capture. Now I want to crop that so it's just this white box. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit beyond that white box. So you see I've got a gray edge around everything. There's a command here called image trim that can trim everything based on the pixel color, and didn't get it all. There we go. So I've trimmed off the gray. Now this image is square and it's the same proportions of the blank image that I used, but it's not the same image size. It's now 412 by 412. I want to resample that. I want to go back to the size. Now it could be any size. I'm going to go 1024 and of constrained proportions. I didn't quite crop it exactly right, did I? Let's see what I've got here. Looks like I've gotten it. So go ahead and do what I was going to do. 1024. And check that out. Alright, you see my wireframe guide is kind of hard to look at. That's alright. That's on a layer here that I'm going to rename to wireframe. All it's going to be is a template. I'll set it to multiply and set its opacity down low. I'm just going to use it for a guide. This layer is going to be our color. I'll create another layer that's going to be our bump. And we'll try filling this right now with one solid color. And just to kind of show you it in Animation Master, I'll choose this light brown and I'll fill that whole layer with light brown. And what I do from here is save this and put Siggraph. Just save it as textures. Let's save it as Siggraph textures. Now I can come back to this and paint. I'm going to save this capture. Okay, I didn't like how small my image looked, and so what I did, and I couldn't do this while I was capturing, I went and changed my screen resolution to a real high resolution that did a screen capture again, and brought us back to where we were. That gives me a little bit better resolution for my decal, or for my wireframe, so I can see it a little bit better, and I have resized the image, so we're back to the 1024. Now, this wireframe, you're not going to want to look at. You're going to want to look at it as a guide while you're painting your colors. But then when you save your what you paint, you're going to turn it off, and then you're just going to save the active layer as the color. So we'll go in here and paint some quick decals, and let's start with these toenails. I need a little bit smaller brush, I think, and I'll pick a lighter shade. And I'm painting on what I'm going to save as a color layer. Now let's say my spots. Let's pick a different color and paint some hippogyraph spots. Whole tip of the tail. I want to use that same color on the other side. Make sure I paint that tail, because this will wrap. You're going to see, think about one of the problems when you're painting your textures when they're spread out like this is that as you paint the seam, what you did on one side is not going to match up exactly with what you did on the other, and that can be a real pain. I'm going to show you a really cool tool called 3D Painter. It's by an AM user called Philippe Louet. He's been working on it. Right now it's still a beta test, but right now this is how you paint your decals in Photoshop. You can paint your color, and I'm not sure this will be the final decal. I'm just kind of, or final map, I'm just kind of playing with it to show you the basic idea of the workflow. So I've got some spots on this guy. I'm going to go ahead and go over the seam so that you're going to see what I'm talking about. Alright, let's say he's probably going to have some spots on his head. is. Lip color, a little pinker, and opacity. Nostrils. Okay, so that's going to get us started for this next thing. What you do is you turn off the layers you don't want to see, and then notice our files, Hippogyraph PSD. We're going to do a save as, and type, you're going to choose target, and I'm going to save this one as our color map, so I'll save it Hippogyraph color, target, in the same folder with my model. Okay, and then in Animation Master, we look at our image folder. Let's load that image. And we're going to load Hippogyraph color. And what you do here is you look down here on your decal for blank, which we're going to rename this decal to skin. Under its images, you only have one image. We're going to add the image Hippogyraph color, and then we're going to delete blank, and then we're going to save. You saw it automatically in my model view. My spots showed up on my Hippogyraph. I'm sure up here at the top we'll see that my seam is really obvious. And that's the trick when you're painting decals and you've got multiple stamps. Even if you have multiple decals, is what do you do about that? And that's why this 3D painter is going to be such a great benefit to Animation Master users. So how do you use that? Well, go to Plugins, 3D Painter, and it's going to load this model into it if I have enough RAM. Have similar navigation tools to Animation Master. The turn button, the zoom, and move. And you notice it also has a project workspace and shows you these decals, the eye, and the different stamps for it. And you see my cursor showing as a little yellow spot. You see when I get to one side and then the other, there's a little jump. And it shows all of the different stamps. Now I want to make only this image's editable. That if I had bump maps and specular maps and stuff all at one time. I only want to fool with painting one map at a time in 3D Painter. Whatever I do to this map, and let's see, here's my brush size in pixels. It's a smaller spot. Because I have so many things open while doing this demo, you can see that my stuff's going really slower. And I think one of these is an eyedropper, and I'm afraid I don't have enough screen room to show everything. And there's an eyedropper tool over here. Anyway, how can I do that? Can I hide any of these views? What I want to do is sample this color and then paint with it. Now, that's not going to be too easy if at the resolution I'm at, I can't see all my tools and I can't seem to move that palette. So we'll just pick a color and pretend we're painting this thing from scratch in 3D Painter. I'm going to use my Wacom tablet, and do I have that set for color? Standard. Yeah. I was painting transparency. Now you could, because our decals are the same size, if you're careful, paint right across the seam, but it's still not ideal to try to do. So I'm going to look at this in a top view, and what I'm going to do now, here's some other buttons that are kind of cool. Is there's a light button, which means you could turn that off and then you're only seeing the diffuse color by itself. The shading is just added to it. We don't really need to see that shading. What we do need to do is to use this projection master to pick up and paint the scene. Okay, so let's do that. I'm gonna just zoom in here and we'll do this neck. What I do is projection paint, start projection paint. It'll take it a second, and I'm getting a screen redraw. I think I have trouble with too many things running at once. Essentially should let me pick up that whole texture and then paint on it. There we go. So now I'm gonna paint with this color, and why do I want to have opacity 100%. Okay, so let's paint our spot. Now using 3D Painter, we're going to paint right across the scene, and it's not, oh, here's the opacity. I want to paint it 100%. So I'm painting right on the seam, my little orange spots. Okay. Let's say I want these spots to be this kind of orange too. I'll just go ahead and do them from right where I'm at. Now I need a different color here for if I could reach my tool palette, I would pick the eyedropper and sample this color. And I wish that I was showing you that, but as it is, that's no good. I think I can Control Z, yeah. Unfortunately, because of the screen resolution, I can't see the whole palette. And I set the screen resolution low so that I could be able to actually capture this video. Okay, that's a better color. Kind of like painting in Photoshop now, like I say. And but we're painting right across the seam onto two different stamps. Now, let's say we like that change that we've made. We go to Projection Paint, Accept Projection Paint, and it will process that and remap it onto the decal in 3D. We need to do that other places here. So let's start Projection Paint again. Well, first let's file, Save Modified Textures. So that means the changes we have put are going to be on that model. Now I'll go ahead and close 3D Painter, and we'll be back in AM. Let's see how they look. So now we have the texture we just painted in 3D Painter on the model. Changes made to the decal. So you could actually go in there and paint your model completely, paint the texture completely in 3D Painter, and would update. And I will go back and paint the rest of these textures in 3D Painter to do the seams and stuff. Now we can take that texture we just did and bring it back into Photoshop. So let's say we did the whole seams where there are issues, and then we still wanted to go back into Photoshop and pick that back up. Now it's not showing here because we didn't save it into the Photoshop file. We saved it into that color file we saved out. So let's open it. And there you see those spots on the decal. And I will take and move that into this other folder. I hold down Shift, and there it is. That layer 1 now is the color. So let's throw the color away and we'll rename layer 1 color. So you see there, now here in Photoshop, if I get back to my brush tools, where I can just hold down Alt and sample a color, I could take and touch that up. Blend it in, end up then painting my color map to match. My darker orange spots. And we had this set in projection paint. There's an option for paint two-sided, and I didn't notice this one in Photoshop, but what's happened here is the spots we painted were projected all the way through the model and came out on the bottom side. So I can see here that I definitely don't want that on the neck. No spots. So there's a option there in projection paint that I didn't notice when I was doing that projected them all the way through. That's how come it got on the toes. And let's see, yeah, got on the neck and got on the belly. So there's something to be careful about. Show. Now of course we need to save that as color again and get those changes back into Animation Master. You wouldn't probably use Photoshop and 3D Painter for painting your decals, but you could go back and forth like that. Maybe you would. I don't know. It's still beta, so I haven't completely decided. Now it wouldn't let me save it because it's open in Animation Master. So I'm going to close Animation Master. And oh, I didn't need to. I'm the one that had it open in Photoshop. before I go back to Animation Master, I want to show you how I paint bump maps. And I'm going to start out by selecting a 50% gray and filling this background layer with it. Because remember, our model, or actually our concept sketch, had a lot of wrinkles, kind of like an elephant or something. Now, let's turn this down a little bit more, because we just really need that to know where the textures go. And I'm going to just start here with showing you the dodge and burn tool. Now, where is that? Oh, I'm in the wrong layer. So, dodge will lighten something. So if I wanted to make something that's going to pop up on the bump map, like a vein or something, I could paint that with the dodge tool. And I can use the burn tool and push in as I go darker and stuff. It gets a little darker. So what gets pushed in will be a recess. And I don't necessarily want to sit there and paint every wrinkle. You know, I could. Well, I'm going to have wrinkle here, 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 and you kind of just work back and forth and decide what that's going to be. Now, it'd probably be easier to start out with something, and what I use is called a pattern brush. And you can take any the texture that you have already made and paint it directly onto something, and it's tileable if you saved a tileable texture as a pattern. So you could take and paint a bumpy elephant skin texture here all over the model. And what is down is going to be pushed up, and what is up is going to be pushed down. And we'll save this as a bump and load it, and it won't be very good, but I'm going to go back and spend a lot. I can't spend all this time painting textures and be able to show it in this demo, but I can kind of give you an idea of how you go about it. You might need a smaller pattern or something like this. So we're giving him a leathery elephant skin. And let's see here, bottom of his feet, maybe a little on top. Alright, now like that could be a bump texture, not a great one. Let's switch to airbrush here and let's fade it out. So we don't want it to be so strong up his back. Maybe we do, but I'm going to just kind of play with it here. let's try saving that as our bump. Name it bump instead of